This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for this next budget work session that Diana and I again will tag team. And I just wanted to start with the budget calendar, just to make sure that all of us are on the same page for the upcoming work sessions that we're going to have. And April the 13th is the next budget work session that we had scheduled, and that's the proposed budget. That we'll take this information from today, and we'll continue to work towards a balanced budget. Some items in red, just for your consideration, are the May 5th date. That's the public hearing notice where it's going to be published. The 23rd will be the public hearing, the first reading, and June the 13th will be the second reading of the budget. So what we want to talk about this morning is to generate some more discussion and continue to work towards that balanced budget. We're going to provide you with some information and updates from the first budget work session, and how we have sharpened our pencils and reduced the number and have some more discussion. Update the budget numbers with specifics to each fund. That there was some requests from council members to be able to show exactly where the money is and remove some of it from general fund and then into the other areas of the budget and discussion on the American Rescue Funds. So just to start out, this again you saw at the last session, and this is our Town of Surfside Beach governmental operating budget in the general fund. You'll see it's a little over $9.6 million, with the total expenditures and expenses being at 9.9, almost $10 million. Our shortfall is now $381,105. So when we started out at the last budget work session, we were a little bit over $1 million. You all said that that was absolutely not going to work. So I'm going to give Diana a ton of credit along with the department heads. We all went back and we all looked at our budgets. We looked at the people, which is the biggest expense into this budget. And we started to, whittle some of those numbers down to be able to have more discussion moving forward. Whether this works or not, this is certainly going to be a topic of discussion for today. When we leave here today, though, we need to have a pretty good idea that, hey, Rob, this is where we want to be, or this is where we don't want to be, so we can continue to work, because Diana and I have about a week and a half to continue to work on this. Diana's working on the budget book, and then obviously to update this for the next budget work session.
Where did the extra $200,000 in revenue come from?
Comes from the capital and replacement fund. Any fixed assets that you take out of capital replacement becomes revenue in the other fund, or in that fund.
So is that one of the trucks or something?
I think I moved a bunch of the stuff that police and fire had, not police and fire, but some of the stuff from the different departments. I think it was the doors for the police department. I don't remember what I moved now, but yes, it wasn't any more trucks, because those were, I don't remember now. I think it might have been some air
Maybe the
conditioners and things like that, that as long as, no, you know what it is? It's heritage. Anything for the capital replacement rules are, it can be anything that has a useful life of over 5 years. So I took the heritage, once we decided we were gonna do the whole heritage thing, then I moved the new PCs and all of that, the ones for the town hall, et cetera, can go through general fund, the ones for police and fire go for hospitality. So it's a matter of moving them around.
And I think you showed that further in the presentation.
I know, mostly it's heritage.
Okay.
So remember that this number is just what you're gonna lose based on this year's revenue. It's not, there's a lot of other things involved in that, but that's just, all that's saying is that what you're bringing in 2024 is not gonna equal what you're having out. You do have reserves that you can pull from, which is what the mayor asked me the other day.
That answer your question, Ms. Kennedy?
Yeah.
So we did show, because we'll go in as Diana goes through and takes a deeper dive into the funds, we did want to at least show on this screen, we've looked at 3 mills and we've looked at 6 mills. And we know we're not there yet. So when you look at 3 mills, that's $225,000 in each mill, again, is $75,000 per mill. And then 6 mills is $450,000. Diana and I thought it was important just to put that up there as a discussion point as we continue to move through what the budget's gonna look like and potentially how it's going to be funded as you all look at this morning. So some updated budget discussion points before Diana kind of dives into each of the funds is we had an addition of 8 new positions. We removed 7 positions from the first budget work session. So there's 8 that you see here. We did remove 7. And again, that's a testament to the department heads. Kenny and John are here, especially with Kenny. As we go through this, if you want to have some questions about what Kenny has done as far as his positions and how he's moved them, he can certainly speak to that better than I can. So for July the 1st, for the 23-24 fiscal year, there's 3 full-time fire department people. We removed 1. The reason why I kept 3 in there is because we have 3 shifts. That keeps 1 additional person, gets us a minimum staffing of 3 instead of 2 on each shift with no reserve person. And what Larry and I have talked about is, and we're continually trying to do this, our volunteer ranks, we've got about 5 people that are coming in and running calls, but with that, there's only certain things they can do. Only one of them is interior, the rest are drivers. So that really does hurt us when we're trying to staff the unit unless we need that driver position. It's a little bit more complicated than just adding a person. The other thing that we're looking at is, again, our part-time people. So we've added part-time people, but unfortunately, just like I've told council on many occasions, utilizing part-time people is very problematic because they work for other jurisdictions. So we have about 2 or 3 that we can rely on that will come in and help us when we need help. But we did reduce that by 1 position. There's 2 full-time peer positions, and we removed the 2 positions for the store, and those 2 positions would work for John on the pier. We kept the 1 full-time public works department person. There's 1 full-time human resource risk manager that we can have some more discussion about. And then there's 1 part-time court assistant. So that's the positions as of July the 1st when this fiscal year hits. Mid-year funding for consideration would be the full-time police department. So Kenny removed those 2 positions that would have started in the July 1st timeframe for this new fiscal year. The full-time administrative assistant, Diane and I had a lot of discussion about that. We removed that and we put it for consideration possibly mid-year, and along with the full-time accountant, which has been a position that's been there since 2018, I believe, that has not been filled. So, and then there's the peer expenses. So you can see that we took them from July the 1st. So we've reduced that number, and bottom line is most of the costs in this budget are coming from positions. So we kept what we thought was prudent, and we have had much discussion about moving out of this year, but we wanted to make sure that we kept them in front of council and the community, because Kenny's police officers we don't want them to go away. It's just Kenny's going to be doing some things from an organizational perspective that that he can have some conversations about. So if you want to, at this point, we can certainly explain some more of these positions, why we cut them, why we want them from here.
What's going to change mid-year? Where is the money for mid-year? I know you're only talking about funding for 6 months instead of 12, but if we're already got a shortfall, that just means we have a bigger shortfall.
Well, one thing would be the pier would be finished, is it hopefully what should be.
Rob,
Yes.
your microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. The pier would be finished, and Diana, you can help me with that too, because there's going to be cost savings for some of the positions that we don't have now that we'll be able to use, but we're going to utilize some of that for other positions.
But the peer expenses and the peer personnel are in the peer fund, so
They are.
that does not solve our general fund deficit.
That is correct, yes. They are in the peer fund.
The assistant court person, part-time court assistant,
Yes,
that was put in by the judge stating that they needed it. And it's my understanding that the 2 people that are in there worked and aren't able to get vacation or anything like that. So my question is that a lot of money
43,000.
for a part-time?
Yeah, it was right around $43,000, I believe is what it was for part-time.
43,000 for a part-time position?
Mm-hmm. I believe that's what it was, yes.
Right there.
And they're doing what?
You have to pay retirement and you have to do everything else, so it does kick it up.
Yeah.
Retirement
So their
is-
salary, that's salary and benefits, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And they are, and Kenny can probably speak to this too, but, talking with Judge Arakis, they've asked for no position for many years. Yeah, and, talking with Judge Arakis, they are, especially Valerie, she's overwhelmed. The part-time position now, there's only certain things that she can do. It falls back on Valerie. And, she's about as maxed as any employee could possibly be, to tell you the truth. So, they felt that in order to be able to keep up, they're going to have another part-time position.
In the process of dealing with Judge Arakis, I had lunch with him a while back. And his whole thing about, he's not really keen on putting another position on. What he'd like to see is this, be honest with you, scale our tickets back to stuff that's normal for the area, or normal in a reasonable manner.
Well, what does that
In other words,
mean?
instead of writing every single ticket on stuff that the town's not getting that much revenue off it to begin with, most of it goes to the state, then why are you writing so many tickets compared to the jurisdiction in the area in whole? I mean, it's just, his impression is we write way too many tickets. And it overloads them in their process of what they got to process. And then when they get it processed, the town didn't make that much off any of it to begin with. So, not that you don't want to ticket people, but when somebody smokes on the beach, they write them a warning ticket. Or somebody's rolls up and they barely roll a little bit, pull them up, give them a warning. Tell them don't be, we're watching, people are watching. So you got to be doing your job. You got to be doing what you're supposed to be doing on the road. But he feels we write too many tickets based on Horry County, based on the area, based on the other law enforcement agencies.
I will defer to the police chief.
Well, I'm just telling you,
Yes, sir.
I guess you Kenny, it's just, that's.
Well, then, with all due respect, Judge Arakis should be here to say that. And I disagree,
Okay.
Respectfully. But if council wishes a reduction in law enforcement in town, it's 4 votes, and I'd be happy to go in and do that. We write more warnings every month than we do tickets. We give all the warnings, all the things that you're saying right there. It's a directive of council to the administrator to tell the police chief to scale back enforcement.
Not that you're scaling back enforcement, it's just the fact that
Okay.
that aspect.
Well, respectfully, I disagree with,
Okay.
not with you,
Well,
but
that's
if that
what- that's what I
information
was
was said, we are one of the safest communities on the Grand Strand. And part of that comes from enforcement efforts, and enforcing the law fairly, justly, and if we see a violation, do we want our officers to say, well, I've met my quota for the month? Or is it better for the officers to, if they see a violation, make a stop, make a determination based on the circumstances, to give that person an opportunity to come in front of a fair, impartial, and detached judge to make a decision about what should happen with that? I don't really know. I'm sorry, I don't understand that thought process, and
We want you to enforce the
if we're
laws.
Can I make a
sorry, I
point?
don't even know what to say.
I met with them for lunch also, and we didn't have that. We talked about him needing that position and how overloaded his office is.
Right.
And, I told him, I think it's great the way, like you're saying, we don't have quotas and that we go in to keep this, the area safe. That's what people want.
The police department has no quotas. Officers do not have quotas. There are no, the officers are just out there doing their job.
Yeah.
See a violation, they stop. Their fault position may be to issue a ticket or make an arrest or whatever, because that is their job.
Sure.
But they are specifically told they have the discretion that if they feel that a warning would accomplish the same mission of education to prevent future violations, then they have that ability to do that. And that's why I think we almost write twice as many warnings as we do citations. And
I also had a luncheon with Judge Arakis, and not one time did he mention to me, he did bring up some things about the town, but it wasn't about the police department writing too many tickets.
Okay.
Well,
I
that
think
was
that-
that was his whole thing that he mentioned to me, so.
Okay. I think Judge Arakis should probably be at these meetings then to be able to communicate how, if he feels that way, to council, so we can sort that out.
Well, can you provide us with some of the numbers of tickets you write versus Horry County versus the other jurisdictions? So can we get
Well,
that?
you got to remember, Horry County doesn't do traffic enforcement. That's the highway patrol. I could hit the highway patrol to see how many citations they write in a month. I don't know how we extrapolate that data and compare it to Surfside Beach, but I don't think that we can reasonably compare ourselves to Horry County PD, because they're a county police department that does primarily criminal enforcement and leaves traffic enforcement to the highway patrol. So I don't know that we can compare that. We do everything here. We do traffic, we do accidents. Horry County doesn't work accidents. They let the highway patrol work accidents. So I don't know that they are a reasonable comparison, but we could compare to Myrtle Beach, or we could compare to North Myrtle Beach. But you'd have to adjust for population, you have to adjust for size, you have to do all of that. And if the end result of that is that council wants to de-police, we'll
I'm not
de-police.
de-policing you, you turn it around. I'm just saying we need to look at all aspects of it, and he mentioned that to me, and I was shocked when he said that. So I was like, are we writing too many tickets then? He said, well, yes, we need to lay back on, not lay back, but we need to look at it as an aspect of, was it necessary to do that, or was it more necessary maybe to write a warning than to go through all this process? And then we go and it's still, you don't get nothing out of it that way. It's just.
Well, but again, what's he comparing to? Like you said, if he's comparing to just Horry County Police, yeah, they write less tickets because most tickets are traffic, probably.
Right.
And so, again, what's he comparing to?
Yeah.
I think that we're sort of mixing apples and oranges,
I agree.
because I think that our judge, who it's his job to adjudicate the cases.
Right.
It's irrelevant how many cases come to him, okay? Whatever cases come to him, it's his job to take care of them. I know that in my 3.5 years that I've been here so far, that Judge Arakis has never asked us for anything.
No.
And he's gone through COVID with us. He's gone through all the stuff that he's gone through with us. And that's the only reason that I bring it up today is eliminating that position. I think he wouldn't have brought it up to us unless it was a severe hardship. And I think that we ought to definitely take that into consideration in our budget. And I don't think it's a whole lot of money that we're dealing with, but I think that that's something that we ought to rethink.
Well, and I agree. I know when I sat down and Diana sat down with him, that was, that's a reaction from his staff. His staff is saying they are overwhelmed. If you go into Valerie's office, and to the point of too many tickets or not too many tickets, all of that discussion, that's really another discussion, in my view. They have to react to what the police department does, and right now they're barely just, keeping their head above the waterline to be able to do that. So I think that is an important position that should not be removed, from this discussion, because he's never asked for one.
Eric, I said, Mr. Kinkin, you asked us what would change in December, and I'm beginning to wake up a little bit now.
Can I get you a cup of coffee?
Way too early. By December, the things that you don't know now is we'll know what was billed for property taxes, which right now they're sending us estimates, but we just don't know what it'll be. So you'll know how much more revenue from property taxes you're gonna get. And this year, we're getting significantly a lot more, possibly because your finance director is way too conservative. the licenses, you'll also know how many more licenses you're gonna get by new businesses coming to town. Permits are up, but will it stay up? We won't know, but we'll know by December a little bit more. Police fines are way up, I have to tell you that. Right now, I had budgeted 125,000 and they're already at 157. So the police fines for this year are considerably more. There isn't really much else parking, we won't know what parking is, and we're just going by guesses. Lanier is gone, we don't know what, Pinnacle gave us an estimate, well, it'll change. So I guess my bottom line to you is, by December, you do know a little bit more than you know now, because now I'm trying to project into the future without knowing
Okay.
what's coming, the recession, are people coming, not coming, we just won't know anything. That's why December is somewhat the month that we figured we could.
But that's the same thing you told us last year.
It is, it's the same thing, that's all you can tell, because you don't know what's coming.
Can't we refer all of this to mid-year? I mean, all this, 3 firemen, the full-time women, why can't we defer all of that? And just go to a regular budget, get a balanced budget and not up nothing, besides this part-time assistant court.
I mean, Mr. Stamey, that could be the will of the council, absolutely,
Well,
as part of the
that's what I'm
discussion. I mean, the answer to that would be, yes, council can do that. Do we feel as department heads, as we have presented this budget to you all for y'all's consideration, is that prudent? The answer is no. Or we would not have even presented these things to you and went back and really took a deep dive in why we're asking for what we're asking. But yes, sir. I mean, the answer to that, sir, is
Well,
yes, you can do that.
You still got $300,000 that we don't have the money for.
Right.
I mean, that's just it in a nutshell. If we want that, this is great. Everything on here that y'all put out is great. If we had the money, I'd say, go get whatever you want, but we ain't got the money. If we do anything right now, if we do what you're asking, we're still almost $400,000 in the red. That's a lot of money for a little town.
And do we have any carryover from this budget year?
We will. We will
Is
have.
it $300,000?
381.
I don't know how much it's gonna be. There will be, because you're down people. Rob filling in for Bill, takes Bill's salary. I mean, there's gotta be different things that haven't been funded, and we will know. At this point, I do not know. My guess is it's probably around, I don't wanna guess.
381,000.
And one penny more.
We don't know, but and there's no way to know that. I mean, I might know that more in 30 days than I know right now, but I don't know that right now. But there will be.
It's a big risk to sit there and raise taxes 2, 3 meals or 6 meals, just because if we waited, like Mr. Stamey said, till December, then have a better picture of it.
Well, but we may have other opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have, we're not even talking about raising millage yet, but, what are some of the expenses that may be included in these requests or in the base budget itself that may be able to move to hospitality tax or our local accommodation tax revenues? I mean, we have the garage door replacement that we already said would come out of hospitality tax. And if we take out, if we take out the 15 for the floral clubhouse, that gives us the whole 15, we only need like 360 now. But are there other things,
Thank you.
in some of this stuff that can move? Like none of it's big money,
No.
but, new events, can that be hospitality or local accommodation money? Just move it in a different fund? Now, that assumes there's money available in those funds, don't get me wrong.
Oh, no, there is.
And
That's a new
Diana,
project.
and Ms. Keating, that's a great point, ma'am. And Diana did that. We went through that exercise, and I think as we go through this, Diana's gonna talk a little bit more about that, because that was the direction of the council from the last meeting, is where can we move? What are some of those other opportunities? Is it gonna be the $380-some thousand? I don't know. I will tell you the answer to that right now is probably no, because we've already moved some of that. But I do want to just mention something, is as we started with this, and I don't have to explain it to you all, I mean, this is your all's budget. We're here to present those things that we believe is gonna make the town safer and better for the people who live here and all that, which I know that is your all's mission also. That's why we're having this robust discussion, which is what we should have. I think deferring everything and just saying, you know what, we're just gonna defer everything for the year because we don't have the money is a decision point, and it can be done, yes, sir, because it's still a deficit of $381,000. If you don't wanna raise the millage, and 3 mils still doesn't cover it, you're right, sir. Are there other things that we could go back and still, try and manipulate? But quite honestly, we've spent a lot of time on this, I can tell you, and I know Diana has, and really seeing what we can and cannot do. The other thing that I have seen also, in my experience, is when you start to just arbitrarily deferring stuff to mid-year, sometimes it gets lost in the sauce. And it's, the staff is gonna have to make sure we keep that in front of council, so it does not. And it's not, we know that you all, if we have a pot of gold, y'all fund all these positions because you know the need. And it's like I said, at the last budget work session, and I know, the department heads agree. At the end of the day, this is about the acceptable risk. What is the acceptable risk that council has for the town in funding firefighters, police officers, especially those two positions? Not that, not that others are not important, but to all shift it to Mr. Staney's question, yeah. I can just tell you as your interim administrator, and it's my job, whether I agree or not, to say, I don't agree with that strategy, but if that's the strategy council goes, then at the end of the day, that's why Kenny moved his to police officers, and through some reorganization that Kenny's doing to be prudent, he did. So, yes, we can do that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to fire this.
The, 2 full-time, on the pier, that's part of the pier.
That is part of the peer fund, yes,
That
sir.
is not part of our general fund.
No, sir, it is not.
Okay, I just want to make sure
Yes,
I
sir,
understood.
it is not. We put that on there because,
But all the other positions are general fund.
yes, sir.
Okay.
I'd like to say one thing about mid-year. We have done a terrible job, my 4 years here, of doing mid-year meetings to really look at the budget, to find out what we could do. In my 4 years on council, we have not done that accurately. Most companies do it and really sit down and have a major budget thing mid-year, and we haven't done that.
Well,
So I think it's good that you got it in there. I think we need to plan for that. And yeah, because a lot of times, let's face it, we'll know exactly where we're gonna be. It could be you had 2 people that you weren't able to hire, and you got money that pays that you got a 1 year, the rest of your money off of that person, not having that person on, with 2 people for that time.
and Mr. Holder, to that point, and councils do it all the time. They move
Yeah.
things to move, I haven't worked for a jurisdiction yet that did not move things to mid-year. But what the organization and what they did was just what you said. And, I've only been here a year and a half. So how all of that worked in the past, if it wasn't prudent, the next administrator does need to do that. I mean, there needs to be a mid-year review of the budget that in its totality that is brought in front of council, that says, this is where we're at, this is what we moved through the fiscal year to mid-year, police officers, firefighters, or whatever, because it's so easy just to go, no. But if you have a mid-year retreat, then you relook at all of those things and see from the pier, from everything that Diana talked about, from the revenues that the town is getting in, where we could be.
Exactly.
Well, don't we get that every month?
You do get
Because-
that every month, yes, sir, but having that mid-year review, if we're shifting things to mid-year, it's really important to do a mid-year retreat.
I won't
to do
argue
that.
that, I'm just saying.
But you
we
do get it every
a
month.
feel for where we are, because she gives us every month.
Yes,
what
sir.
our income is and what our expenses are.
Yeah, but what that doesn't do is show you the fluctuation of, over time, when does your revenue come in? It's kind of cyclical.
Yeah, right.
And when are your expenses? It just assumes we get 1/12 of everything every month.
That's not true.
And, yeah, so
Versus a retreat
yeah,
where you're getting all
we're
that.
getting month 6 and we might show expenses at 50%. We're thinking, oh, we're golden. But in reality, 90% of those expenses may come in the second half of the year, and that's what's not reflected in those monthly.
We also get a new administrator in, administrator gonna be doing the position, can look at the staff, look at all of y'all, and then say, look at the budget, and then put his 2 cents or her 2 cents worth in to what it needs to be in November, December, or whatever it needs to be. If there's any changes need to be done, they may come back and say it's fine.
Well, and you're right, but I think your staff right now is very competent in being, in what we're saying. And I'm not saying you're not saying we're competent, but I'm saying that what we've presented to you now is through a lot of discussion, through a lot of analysis. But you're right, Mr. Drake, you get a new administrator to come in here, they may have a whole different process.
Right.
Now, there's only so much they're gonna be able to do with the positions that we have here, adding and not funding this position and this position. But I can just tell you from what we have here, we feel very strongly about what we need here. John does, Kenny does, I do, as far as being able to keep the town moving in the direction that council wants this town to go. Whether it's funded now or moved.
Well, if we did as good a job as we did last year, we'd be fine.
Recommendation to recover the $381,000.
Good question.
I mean, let's cut to the chase. We
Yeah.
still gotta cut out of the general fund expenses or add to revenue somehow, $381,000. What are you recommending we do to recover $381,000? Because as I look through, and I separated out what we were calling the wish list the last time into general fund to the various funds, we had, of all the requests, we had 1.4 million. And we needed to cut about 1.1, so there's your 300,000. And none of them, other than John's truck and, personnel, as we've talked about, his dump truck, are significant items. They're talking $25,000. Not that that doesn't add up, but which of these other things are we saying we're going to cut or defer to make up the 381,000? I mean, we've got 144 in heritage equipment, but I understand that's part of what we shuffled to come out of capital, correct?
Yes.
So there's 144 of the three.
Well, it's not, no, it's not.
Already in there.
No, it's already in there. I think to answer your question, Ms. Keating, 2 things. One, do we continue to go back and cut more?
Well, we
Sure.
have to.
Yes, and then to fund it, I mean, we've had the discussion about a millage increase. Which, I mean, I know there's not a lot of appetite for that, but the answer to the question is,
That's the realistic thing of the whole thing, isn't it?
it is. I
I
mean,
mean, to get the money, to get any more money for this town, besides what we're bringing in, and Diane said, they might be a little here and a little there, but to get the money that people's asking for is the millage increase. That's basically the only way we're gonna get any money.
well, it is, and Ms. Keating's point, going through, and we went through that exercise. I mean, we went through the exercise, we talked with department heads, we took out what we thought was prudent, the department heads did. Are there other things that we can do? Certainly, that's a simplistic answer, but at the end of the day, if council says, okay, we approve these things, it's a millage increase. I mean, no one wants to hear that, no one likes a tax increase, it affects all of us, but that's the answer.
Can I jump in for a second? Just some things aren't as obvious as you'd like them to be. Somebody touched on it earlier when it came to the court position, the part-time court position, how people can't take vacation. Well, that's true throughout the whole town. We have a cap of 360 hours of vacation you're allowed to have. After that, you won't you lose your accrual if you don't use it. Okay, right now I have about 9 people, maybe 10, that are maxed out on vacation. because they can't take a day off because the responsibilities are so high. So having that extra person, it eases, so people, when people can take a vacation or take a day off, that's the unseen thing that, that people have to understand. That, it's not fair to ask a man to give up his vacation for the sake of the operation, pick up the trash or whatever, or to mow the grass and lose his vacation time, which is his benefit.
That's not right either.
You don't see that on the paper here,
And
but
believe it or
that's what's going on in town.
we see that. Listen, if I was working, I'd want my vacation time too. But
Yeah.
my question is, how are we gonna pay for these people without this millage increase? I mean, that's just it in a nutshell. We can sit here and babble all we want to. If we don't raise the millage increase in this town, we're gonna stay in the same position we're at right now.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at, is that, the two things they crash into each other at some point,
Absolutely.
if a man's accruing 4 weeks of vacation a year, and he can't take but maybe one, because, your supervisor's saying, listen, we need you, we got this drainage project, we got this, the summer rollout's coming up, there's things that have to be done. It's not fair to ask the guy to lose his vacation, that he's earned,
No.
because the town's capping him at 360 hours.
And the town ends up paying them after that cap. They can request that through our policy. So the point is, we can pay them, but they're not getting their time off. The work-life balance is totally off, which.
And some people don't want no time off. Some people want to work all the time.
Yeah.
But that's the majority of people want that time off.
Exactly.
Diana's look at you.
I
That's
think,
Diana, she wants to work all the
You don't
time.
know.
Yeah, but you don't
I'm
want to.
not trying to make fun of nobody. I'm just saying, that's the truth. I mean, there's some people that don't want it. Some,
Absolutely, but
you might have 1 out of 10, but that's.
Yeah. But you don't wanna have to budget a couple $100,000 just to pay people for their vacation.
You're going to, even with, to Mr. Jenkins' question about, Diana, how are we gonna fund this mid-year? Where's this money gonna come from mid-year? We keep kicking the can down the road with this millage increase. It is only going to become a bigger can. It just is. And if council deems that we're good the way we are, we're good with public safety the way it is, we're good with the way the trash being picked up, then so be it. We won't agree with it, we'll express that, but at the end of the day, you're all council, you're gonna tell us what to do, we're gonna react to it. That's what we do, because we love our jobs and we love the town, and that's what we're gonna do.
but it's our job to make way and make sure, and what we're talking about now, all the things that everybody's cutting off of their budget, the fire department, the police department, the public works, they're cutting off because of our new town stuff. I mean, we need the police officers. Why? Because we have a new pier. We have new stuff coming on. And the same with public works. We need to fund that stuff. And I don't think that a millage rate is going to hurt.
Well, the simplistic answer of it is, yeah, I mean,
I think it's gonna hurt.
I mean, it,
At $36.
I
Yes.
think you are going to hear significant outrage after the disaster the pier project has been, with the faulty designs and the incomplete designs and some of the other drama that's been assigned to it. You now come out and you say, oh, by the way, we're gonna raise village. I think you're gonna get a lot of backlash.
I'll take my dose of it if that's the case.
yeah, I think, people, I mean, we're getting ready, where I live, I mean, I'm getting ready to go through a tax increase. I live right
So are
across the
we,
street.
because
Well, we are
the county
too.
raises every week.
Yeah, everybody is. I mean, coming from the county, so
The county
we're all
raises it every year,
impacted.
and they said they're gonna continue to raise it.
And that's the point is, we sit here and we talk, because we know we're trying to do the best for our citizens here, trying to keep things up. We get it, we understand it, but at some point, you have to, it's a tough decision. And yes, Ms. Keating, you're right, people are going to, the pier aside, which I know dovetails into the conversation. I mean, it's just going to, and then next year is an assessment year, so raising a millage at that point in time is, say, a little harder problematic to do, so, yeah.
But the realistic thing behind it all is, if we don't get more money, you can't have 3 firemen, he can't have 2 policemen, he can't have another person. It's just, that's sensible.
Well, even if we got a SAFER grant, and the SAFER grant would, defers it for 3 years, but, or 4
But then you're still
years,
paying it.
but you're still gonna have to pay it at some point.
Right.
Yeah,
You know,
you
the
get a
bill's
3-year
gonna come due.
You get a 3-year burden,
Well,
but that still needs to be that.
you still have to fund it, it does. It
So
still
we
has-
still don't know what all the funds at the pier is gonna be guaranteed. There's no guarantee in anything. So we still don't know
Well,
where the funds are gonna come from the pier.
well, I don't
Public-
think,
But the residents' funds have not gone toward the pier during all this time.
Yeah, that is.
yeah,
Okay. And
True,
that's one
true.
thing that we try very hard not to do, that the residents don't have to pay for the pier.
You know,
Yeah, but the residents don't understand that. We have been very, very poor at communicating what the peer project is actually being and why there's issues and what it costs and where the resources are coming from. We have just been very lax in communicating the peer project. So what that does is it lets everybody make up their own stories. I mean, just like the Circle K. We now bought that property, by the way. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
and we were the only one to buy it because it was the town precluding them from doing anything with the property.
Who bought it?
Right, where we got that money from?
The town.
well, I
Yeah,
don't,
so, I mean, they fill in the drama and it never makes us look good. It never says the town did the right thing, ever.
I don't know if it will ever do that, no matter how much you.
Well, but we
communicate.
can help our own selves. We don't have to keep shooting ourselves in the foot.
I don't disagree that with Ms. Keating's comment that it will not be received well. Never does a tax increase get received well. But if you look at right now, Social Security, and that's the income for a lot of our residents went up by 8%. And almost everything, the cost of living's gone up so much.
They have
If
more
we
money.
could live within our budget, that would be unreal, because you can't expect our budget to be without going up with the cost of everything, from gas to vehicles to everything's gone up. And we have to be able to talk and communicate that, but it's a fact of life right now. And everything, but you also, the cost, for the residents, we have a lot of people that are on fixed incomes, but they are on, their savings account is drawing more right now.
Right.
They got more money coming in.
I've
You
talked
got more
to-
money coming in.
Yep, because your savings, you're getting more for your savings than you
That
did.
don't even come close to the
So-
concept of
It does make a difference.
I've talked to a lot of people, and most everybody I've ever talked to about millage increase, they're all for it. If you say it's for the police department, or if it's for the fire department, for public safety, it's more than half the people you'll talk to is for that part. It's the part of you spending something for a new town hall. They don't like that. But if you getting something for public safety, public works, there's some people about that. They don't mind paying a little bit more and to be safe.
Well, and yeah, and people will draw their own conclusions about what they think, and you're right. But if you just, and I know we've got more to cover and Diana kind of going through what she laid out, but just for the sake of conversation, if you go to the funding proposal slide for the millage, which is in your packet, and I'm sorry, my computer died, and I didn't hook it up, it was my fault. But if you go to that, since we're talking about millage, and again, where we're at right now, 3 mills wouldn't do it. I mean, can we go back and try to get it down to 3 mills? Diane's shaking her head. We could certainly do that to keep it at the 3 mills. To Ms. Keating's point, see what we can move here and there. It's not gonna be big dollars, but would that help get it to where it's covered for a 3 mil? But if you look at 6 mills, again, at a property value, and we'll just split the difference. of $500,000, you're looking at a $120 increase per year. That's annual. Not monthly, annual. So, that, to your point, Mr. Stamey, people are gonna draw their conclusion about what, why they think they need it, whether they're gonna approve it or whether they agree with it or not agree with it. But if they look at the dollars and they go, how's this gonna impact me? How's this gonna hit my pocketbook? You're looking at $120 if you split the difference at $500,000. I don't know too many properties that are $300,000 probably here in the town of Surfside Beach. But you split the difference, you're looking at $120. So I think you're right. I can't speak to the pier other than what I've tried to do is the interim in all of the years previous in really communicating the dollars and all of that to Ms. Keating's point. I think we could probably all do better at that and a lot of things. But but to communicate to our residents the reason why, and then here's how it's gonna hit your pocketbook, that's where we really need to have that discussion and show them this. If we're going to seriously consider a millage increase, which if we're gonna do those things, that's the way it's gonna be funded. Because we're not gonna be able to move, Diana can't move enough money, can't move things enough around from different fund to fund to make this work and cut certain things, here and there. You're talking $25,000.
Well, there's a little bit more money I could move, but the prudent part of me says, as Mr. Drake said, where's the pier going? That money is sitting in those funds so it can go to the pier if it need be.
Yeah.
I'm just way too conservative, but if you need that money and you come and say, where are we gonna get this money? It's there. If you send it all to general fund, it's not gonna be there.
And right now, Diana, to the pier, because Diana, we talk about that all the time, the pier, we see the change orders, we see these things that right now, we're prudently looking at, whether people agree with the decisions that are made or not, we're really trying. But right now, we looked at it Friday, and our pier reserve fund is down to 200 some thousand, it's public knowledge, from the million. So with handrails and other things they're here. It is what it is right now. If it would have been handled differently in the past, then okay, maybe we wouldn't be here, but we're here. So we look at that because Diana and I worry about that. We're like, okay, when this is done, where's the money coming from? Is it coming from American Rescue? Where's it coming from? Because we still don't know what the total amount's going to be. And we understand it. But we also understand your all's hard decision that you have to make. But from our perspectives, we have our work-life balance for our employees is not good. And we still got to protect the town. The fundamental responsibility is to protect this town. You let one bad thing happen, there won't be any discussion about millage increase. It'll be a whole different discussion. So that's really what we're trying to do. So with that, and we can certainly come back to the position piece as we go through this, but Diane is just gonna kind of go through the next quite a few slides to just give you all an update of how she's kind of moved some money around and start with the general fund revenue slide, and I'll try to get the PowerPoint back up.
Okay, the changes to that were, the revenue for taxes is still the same, because I didn't, have anything else to change it with. Business licenses, I left the number the same. The transfer from other funds went up, from $1.3 million to $1.4 million. I did bring up some more money for different things. Parking revenue, they gave me new numbers, and unfortunately it went down instead of up. And then the use of the capital replacement is the other thing that changed. We put some more things that we could take out of capital replacement. As I said, it was the stuff from Heritage. Since we decided that project was a go forward, that's why I put more of it into capital replacement. So your number went from what it was, $1,947,600 to $1,602,000, but it is taking money from other funds to do that. On the expenditure side, public safety changed because Kenny took 2 people out. General government changed because I think also removed some other people. Public works did the same. Parking went up. No, parking went down from 333 to 299. Non-departmental Where I had all the heritage money in there is what I moved around. I took it out of non-departmental and put it into capital purchases. Some of it went to hospitality. We moved it as much as we could. Capital purchases were 259, they went to 323. Non-departmental changed, as I said, by that number for heritage and possibly the taking down of the building at Floral Clubhouse. I'm not real sure, but that's, I think, main things were. So the expenditures went from 10,000,005 to 9,000,009, or almost 10 million, so it went down $500,000. Police and fire, the old number, the new number is 4 million, it was 4,771,000, it went down to 4,533,000 for those expenditures. So the next page is just a synopsis of the last page. It just tells you what how the two things changed. Revenue is still 9,906,02, excuse me, and 9,983 for our deficit of the 351. The next page, the general fund balances have changed is the capital replacement line. Second line went from 691 to 626 because we used it for different capital items. And then the parking number changed because they changed their revenue and they changed their expenditure. So that estimate has changed. But there'll still be $500,000 in there to use for buying land or whatever you need to do with that number. So the months covered are 3.3, so we're just a little bit short. We're not as short as we were. But as I said, and we don't know, we probably will have a surplus this year is my guess. I can't tell you how much it'll be, but it's because we're down on people. I think once we do February, which I haven't done February's statements yet, we'll have a little bit better answer to that. But I think we'll probably, my guess is somewhere around 200,000 is what we'll end up with then for the year, but it's totally gashing into that. So I think there will be a positive to this year, but the budget is done based on just the current year standing alone by itself. If you don't want to do it that way, we can just budget in that we'll take the money out of reserves if we don't have it. And that's all I have on that, unless you want to go have any questions, which I'll be happy to answer. The general fund expenditures, which is on page 11, is the next one we go to, and you can see how it went from 8,000,009 to 9,000,009. It was 10,000,005, what we had last week. It's down to 9,000,009. And there, basically, as what I said before, we changed it for moving salaries out, and all salaries except for John's sanitation fund are in the general fund. The other funds, the general, his sanitation fund repays the town, the general fund, but all salaries go through general fund.
Except the pier.
Well, pier and sanitation, but they will, actually, we pay it, they pay us back, but yes, the pier would go through the pier and sanitation goes through sanitation. But everything else, all of the police officers and everybody else, everybody's paid out of general fund, which is the main operating account to keep the town going. So the changes there are, as we said before, it's to non-departmental, it's to capital, it's to administration. Finance went down because we took that person out as the accountant. Everything else is, as we said before. So we're down to 9,000,009 instead of 10,000,005, or 10,000,006. On the expenditure page, which is the next page, we still have these 3 firefighters, the light equipment operator, the human resources person, and the part-time court clerk for the total of $439,000 of new employees, which is, I don't know how else to say it, but that's really what's costing you.
Well, we raised the salary on the risk manager.
We did, we kind of felt that
90,7 wasn't enough.
apparently that, that I'm not.
Yeah, it's not, I did some research on that, when you're looking at those two positions, and, that's why it was raised. So I did an analysis of that to see. Now, one of the things that I could possibly do, I know that, we could just use that person that's just called human resources and then have some ancillary duties of risk management, which I think from a risk management perspective, we need somebody to do those types of administrative responsibilities. And in full disclosure, I have not looked at a company yet. I know that was bought up last time, but I will just say I was so busy, I did not get a chance to do that.
Any other questions on that one? Special revenue funds, accommodations did not really change. But it has, on the next page, on page 15, at the very bottom, we have the two things that were deferred from last year, so we still haven't had a decision, so they are not budgeted, which I did forget all about those two things. But basically, these numbers are the same as what we came in with last week. No change. If you go to page 15, though, at the very bottom, we have the deferral from the meeting, the drone, and the grand opening for events. I mean, a lot of,
The other thing we talked about is, I think Mr. Drake brought up the additional beach wheelchairs.
Mhm.
You know, we're only replacing 2, why not replace all 5? I mean, that's just another 10.5 out of accommodations tax, but, you know,
That's fine.
it may be worth tracking that way.
Yes, ma'am.
so you can add that to the deferred list if that's what you want to do, and you vote on it, then the vote, I only went by what was voted, what was deferred and what was passed.
Well, because the other one was the peer committee recommendations for modifications of the peer, but that's not quantified to be a number, so. Those were the only things that were not addressed. Those 4. But I mean, that's only a difference of 10,000 out of accommodation tax.
Well, we can certainly add it, there's enough money, you just need to tell me what you want to add, yeah. But they are not in this number right now.
What was the peer committee again, Miss Katie?
They keep making recommendations, like to change to the garage door opening and, you know, put the clear glass and, you know, some of these modifications that if we make after the pier is done, is going to be quite expensive. And is that accommodation tax money? Is that hospitality tax money? Or is that more, you know, wait until the pier fund has, you know, excess operating capital?
I thought we had just
Yeah,
discussed
We,
that department for whether it was even going to be a town store
we
or
did,
not.
well, you all made the decision that it's not going to be a
That's
town store,
what
that it's
I-
going to be deferred. But I think what Ms. Keating is saying, that if somewhere down the road, because we said it was going to be deferred and looked at, you know, maybe a year
Yeah,
later.
this was the
That's-
comment
that's what
Bill
that was.
made about, you know, the expenses
Right.
due to the recommendations of the peer committee. You know,
Yes,
they-
ma'am.
have we included the big banner over the stairway? You know, they wanted, what, the 3 flagpoles, I mean, is that included in the pier expenses, you know? Some of those things, how is that paid?
Mhm.
You know, is that solely out of the pier fund? And what we hope to be residual revenue? I mean, where's that money come from? Is that accommodation tax money? Is that hospitality tax money?
It just needs to be.
That's not been quantified, that's what I said. You know, we had this comment about stuff, but we didn't quantify what that stuff was or what it cost. So it's just a big gaping hole at the point.
Okay, I understand.
So until we get those quantified, this is the budget that came up from the committee, and other than that, you tell me what you want to do. Council has the right to override whatever the committee did and add or subtract or whatever you want to do. So at this point, this is the things I have. And you'll see that there is paying for the pier debt out of this. The pier itself, this is the problem I would warn you about the pier. But we're not there yet, so maybe I should just wait. But the pier, obviously, revenue depends on when it opens, which we don't know, that we get all of the rent that we think we're gonna get. I mean, there's just a whole lot of assumptions, so we have to move some, the main thing I've moved right now to the pier, and answer to your question, is enough to cover the debt, because that is the main thing that has to be covered, in my opinion. Anything else that you want, or the want me list, we'd have to sit down and figure out. The pier does have some of its own money. It had parking money from years past, so there's some money there. We have almost run out of the money that we were going to transfer up, which is the number that I report to you every month. And next year, the pier is only, my budget only has the pier getting, where's that number? It's on here somewhere. $575,000, and we need almost 300 and something thousand of that for the debt payment. So that would leave $200,000. Plus they'll be getting their own parking money, which will help them, but there
Well,
isn't an
and I
excess.
know Alex did a very detailed,
He did.
you know, forecast into potential expenses and revenue sources and so forth, so. But like you said, until
Till it opens.
we pull the trigger.
Plus he had merchandise
And
in
he
there
had
too.
merchandise.
So he had other
But
things
he
in
did
there.
do a
But
good
he did.
detail. He did a great job.
So it's gotta be where we scale it back and when is it gonna open? That's always the big
Right.
problem.
And we know we're not gonna have a store right now, or I say the foreseeable future, or whatever that looks like. But
These are all negative.
And I don't know if I heard them asking about some sort of entranceway above the stairs.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they realize that there's gonna be a sign on the building A that says Surfside Beach Pier. You want two right next to each other.
Yeah, they do, because there was discussion about Surf Diner sign in the main Surfside Beach, pier sign conflicting, but there is no conflict there.
Yeah, no,
With
yeah.
Sabrina and all of that, but I think the signage that they were looking for that arch is that photo opportunity, but I believe, and don't quote me on this, I'll have to look at it again, talking with the committee, and I believe Alex, I think that was like $50,000. It was not cheap. It was very
Well, and I
expensive.
mean, we have the sign by the entrance to the parking
Yes,
lot
ma'am.
that says Surfside Beach Fishing Pier. Stand by that and then you get the whole pier behind you, so.
Yeah, I don't- and
And we're putting the shark and the directional beacon thing back up, correct?
The shark belongs to the Surf Diner, not us.
Yeah, but we're putting that back up, I think, aren't we?
That's the direction of council. A mast has to be erected and, it was bolted to the wood, one of the wood, pilings before, so now that'll have to be engineered and figured out. They can't just slap it up anywhere they want to. Has to be in their encroachment area, in the deck area. You wouldn't want it out on the pier, would you? I
I
don't know.
mean, that was always the big photo op, is having that on the pier.
Put it down in the parking lot. Well, that's another thing, I guess, as we move closer to that time, when they upfit, we'll have those discussions at that point.
The other thing on the accommodations, I would go back to page 14 just for a second. Based on what we know or what I've built in here, which is a moving target, the last line before the 989,000, we're putting there's $24,000 that we have not spent, which would be from next year's revenue, everything being said, but we're not in the deficit in the accommodations tax at this moment, so will be that money. Don't forget, with this budget, your goal is to have a balanced budget to go into the year, and then you obviously can change it any way you want. You'll have a new administrator, new staff, whatever. So the goal is to get a balanced budget so that you are complying with the law and all of that stuff.
Well, isn't that true that we have until August to pull the trigger on a millage increase?
For the county, yes, you do. Mhm.
What about for the town?
Well, you can do the budget the way it is, and then if you decide to do it in July, you just go back and amend it.
I mean, we could defer $381,000 worth of stuff, whatever that may be, for mid-year determinations.
You could do that.
And, we start operating under this balanced budget, by the time July and August come around, we might have a better feel of, are we really running too thin?
you could,
You
yes,
can do it.
ma'am.
That's fine.
Yes, ma'am, that's an option.
We can do it.
And we'll have a new administrator by then too.
Right, and they'll want to change things. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, and they should.
And they should.
Right, they should have an input on it.
Yeah, I mean, that way we don't do it twice. We might just do it once.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I mean, that was kind of my point with the fee for the pier parking lot. It's like, well, we don't know what the optimum number is because, Pivot hasn't done the strategy for the town yet. We're probably gonna do that twice, to change the parking fee. I mean, it's not even open yet. We don't even know how big it's going to be,
Yeah, You have the same problem with the fishing fees. Somebody's gotta decide if we're gonna charge for fishing, because that's not in, I mean, there's a number in here, but
But it's not
they're still questioning
set up.
whether we're even gonna charge for that and who's gonna charge for it. how much
Who's
it's gonna be.
saying we're not?
Oh, no, it's whether who's gonna collect it and
Oh,
how
who's
much
gonna
collect
collect
it,
it,
how much it's
yeah.
gonna
Well, we're
be.
going-
Are we gonna do half price for residents? I mean, all these questions just keep,
You
I
still
don't
got,
know the
you
answer.
still got on the upper side too, the fee, the gate fee, if we're gonna do one next year or not gonna do one.
Well, it's not in here. but
Right, it's not
you
in
know,
there.
Yeah, the next 24, 25, yes, sir.
Right.
Okay, if you go to hospitality, this is the meat of what you have available, but our ordinance is a lot more limiting than the one that the county has or that the state has, because ours was grandfathered in.
Let's change it. Let's become more lenient.
Well, but the thing is, what you're not lenient about is it would use it all for tourists, which would limit it for that. What we have that the other cities and towns don't have is that ours is used for capital items for police and fire, which are always big items. New firehouses, new police houses, new cars, new fire trucks. That's what ours does that other people's didn't. It used to let us do, it still allows for stormwater, which the other cities and towns across the state were like, you can't use it for that. Well, ours says we could. But now we have our own stormwater fund, which is helpful. But we can still use it, but you can use it for underground. You can use it for a lot of things that are not just tourist related, which is very good.
So
for
ours
us.
is actually better than the
I
others.
correct. That's what I would fight tooth and nail to keep this the way.
Okay.
But it grows, it has quite a bit of money in it, so you have to be real careful about how you move it. So if you go to page 17, you'll see the next second to the last line, we have next year, based on what I think we're gonna bring in, and these numbers could be way out of whack, we would add $1.6 million. But that $1.6 million is gonna help you if you come and say, I need money for the pier.
But
Because,
then that almost begs the question of some of the third-party services or building maintenance vis-à-vis the fire department at least. Again, not big money, but it does, erode that 380. I mean, if we can move garage doors, why can't we move gutters? Why can't we move
I think
painting?
you did.
because it's not capital in nature, it's more repairs, but I mean,
But I thought the gutters were being replaced, and
we can move that. if you want.
it's not a lot of money, but
It's not a lot.
like I said,
There's probably a few more things we could move. It wouldn't be enough, obviously, but, I mean, we can go back and look at it again.
and I assume the HVAC replacement is on town hall.
It is.
It's kind of townwide.
Well,
just
yeah, it's
always-
townwide. So we have money there to replace one, wherever that may end up.
Yeah, because it used to be only one a year, but with the new building, we have so many HVAC units, and we already replaced 2 over there this year.
Plus, we talked about, that money could be used for the underground in case we're short on that.
Which is right, that's correct. That's why,
So, I
that's
mean,
the one I tried, that's personally for me. is to keep
it's important that we keep
as much as.
money in that fund, just,
He's gonna want a new fire truck at some point, and,
no.
I need to go get
He's
it.
not.
Hospitality always pays for half. The other half comes out of the capital replacement fund if we have enough, we do, but because half of the truck can be said it's for tourists or helps for tourists. Not all of it would be a tourist item, so we usually do half.
All we give him was a half a truck.
Yeah, we give him half a truck. But the other thing is the Horry County settlement, which we don't have any idea what the Horry County settlement was.
Right.
It came in a huge number last time, we don't know, so.
And when are we planning on getting that?
There's a date on it, I would believe it's October
I
15th.
think that's what you said.
I think it's October 15th. So you'll get that, so I only have 275, it could be $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way
So
for me to
there's
know.
your
Well,
mid-year
there
decision.
could potentially be a mid-year decision.
And we do break that up between hospitality and ATAX, it is in the
Well-
general fund.
But again, we have to be careful with these kind of things. It's a mid-year decision point, but it's a windfall money, it's a one-time money. So as long as your expense that you're authorizing midterm is a one-time expense,
And that.
you're okay.
Well, that's why I'm putting it in the pier.
Right.
Settlement, and because of what we did last time, I'm putting this total settlement going into the pier so that it's not
We don't
left
limit.
in hospitality that has so limited uses, but for the pier, there's gonna be things, is the rent gonna start July 1st, is it gonna
Right.
start August the 1st, is it gonna start, that's why I did that. So in October, the pier would have some money to operate on. I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, I was just gonna say that, and that question, what you just brought up is something Diane and I have talked about. You know, when you're using some of these monies that for people or for equipment, it could potentially not just be a one-time purchase. You know, there could be it needs to be every year that these things are paid for.
Well, and I
that's
think
where we
that
have to
might
careful.
be something, you know, a valuable data point, like, you know, many of these requests, other than personnel, you know, how many, this may be the one-time expense, but what is the ongoing? Like, for example, I'll just pull up, the mobile CAD software. Again, it's out of hospitality tax, so it's kind of a moot point, but it's $30,000. But I assume that has a maintenance contract that goes on every year is some amount of money.
We'll be eliminating other programs that we use now, so that will be a wash.
Yeah.
That'll
Or-
be savings.
You know, your incident management software. You know, that might be a one-time 7,600, but what's the ongoing expense? You know, we've got, you know, the comprehensive plan, okay, that's another 25, that's a one-time, one and done for 10 years. Document management system. You know, there's a one-time fee of 30,000, there's probably a monthly maintenance fee or
And we did
annual maintenance
cut that
fee
out.
after that.
Mhm.
So, you know, it would be good to know what is the one time I have to absorb now, but what do I have to absorb ongoing? That then is an argument toward your millage increases. But just to say, I need 8 mills or 6 mills, whatever it was, to cover this 300,000, that's not correct. I mean, we have to see what is our ongoing obligations by doing some of this stuff. I mean, maybe 8's not the right number, maybe it's 6 or whatever it was. You know, because if we have ongoing obligations for most of these things, it tallies to more than that. Because then we're gonna have the same problem next year, we're gonna say, okay, we didn't raise it enough. Because we weren't considering the ongoing total cost of ownership of some of these things we approved.
Well, in personnel, I mean, that's an ongoing, I mean, that's every year an ongoing expense, because, I mean, you look at the retirement, how much did it go up?
It's at 1% a year.
It goes up 1% a year. So, you know, from.
But I think if we split this out to say, you know, this is your one-time cost, this is your ongoing cost, you know, more about, this is a consequence of approving this one-time cost, you've got this then ongoing cost. Then we can see really what we're obligating the town to be. I mean, just like with the Heritage, we had the 144 or 124, whatever it was, our monthly fee. Well, that's not really a new request. That's kind of already an obligation, needs to be in the budget, you know. We've signed off on that. That's not a question. It has to be paid. But, you know, so I think there's some of these kind of things that we need to understand. Yeah, I might be putting up $30,000 today, but I gotta come up with 15 a year thereafter, or 11, you know, a year thereafter. And that then starts to show you how much your budget is gonna go up over time, and why you need that millage increase now.
And I think, I'm not sure if Diane is finished with this slide or not, but I think when she goes to the next slide, because what we did was we broke out the hospitality fund monies and we produced a slide that shows the purchases. How are we spending that money?
Right.
And that might be good to put a column there ongoing, or what that might look like. If we're capturing one time, or what would the ongoing expense or that obligation?
Yeah, but I'm only
potentially be?
worried about the general fund right now.
Okay,
I mean, hospitality accommodations, they all kind of take care of themselves because everything you do there takes a vote. But with the general fund, and the general fund's where we have the deficit, you know, we've got to come up with a plan. This is the operating expenses of the town. So we either have to figure out how can we move some of those expenses into these other funds, or understand what is our ongoing obligation of doing some of these things. You know, we have a dump truck for $150,000. We've asked for that same dump truck for what, 3 years or
At least.
so? So, yeah, we can say no today, but guess what? We're gonna ask for it again next year. And if you say no next year, we're gonna ask for it again the year after. So sooner or later, you're gonna have to buy a dump. So until you know your ongoing obligations, that 150 is going to reappear if you keep taking it out until you finally buy it. So your ongoing obligations for this is what it takes to run this town. And this is what it's going to take kind of next year by understanding these things you've approved this year have ongoing costs that we're not even considering right now. Your budget next year goes up another, and I'll just say 10% just for hoots and giggles. So if you're really gonna consider millage increases, I wanna know more about where my future is headed. And I know everything's going up, it always has. Very rarely does it ever go down. And if it does go down, it goes up twice the next time. We need to make the decision and make it good for more than today. We need to make the decision such that we anticipate where we're gonna be next year and maybe even the year after, such that, we don't see like the county, we're gonna raise it again this year, we're gonna raise it again this year. I think we owe it to our residents not to raise taxes every year.
And I think, we do capture some of that when you look, if you're using like fleet and things like that, we do capture some of what you're saying, I believe, don't we?
Yeah, we've got
when it comes to some of these things that Ms. Keating's talking about.
all the
So,
vehicles have
yeah,
that
the vehicles and
schedule
all
of
that.
replacement.
Personnel, we kind of capture some of that with the benefits increase, I'm just trying to process in my head as I take notes, Ms. Keating, what you're
Well,
saying. to be able
and
to
it
show.
can really be just assumptions, as long as you document what your assumptions are. We assume, the salary and benefits obligation go up, 5% a year, because you get a COLA of 3 or 4, you got your pension obligation of 1, so you just say, my assumption is this goes up a minimum of 5% a year, and you just forecast that, it's a thumbnail approach to it, it's just kind of.
It's not gonna be an exact science, but it
Yeah,
is
right.
at least showing.
And it doesn't need to be, it just needs to be an order of magnitude that says,
Yeah, but that still don't tell you what you're gonna need in the next 2 or 3 years for more people where they're asking now. Actually, they came in after 14. And they got it down to 7, then they got it down to a couple,
well,
but that don't
but again,
tell
you can,
you.
but you can add, when you're forecasting the total cost of ownership is what it's called in the real world, but the total cost of operating expenses for the town, you forecast out what it is this year, you make the assumptions that, base salaries, if we just keep the people we have, goes up 5%. You can say, all right, we know we need these other people. So you say, we're going to phase these in over the next 2 years, 5 years. So you just document your assumption. That assumes we add 2 firefighters and 2 police officers in the next budget year, blah, blah, blah. It just gives you that order of magnitude that says 3 mills this year might be okay to get us through this budget, but it's not gonna get us through next year, and it's certainly not gonna get us through the following year.
And I think that goes back to the discussion that we've all been having a little bit that I know John has. It could be the people piece, the staffing of the town piece, and then the equipment and apparatus replacement schedule. It could be a slide that would show what that looked like for the assumption for next year or the next 5 years, whatever that might be.
Well, and
Because
as
again,
we
it'll be an
move to
assumption,
more
you know,
technology.
Yeah.
That all carries an annual, maintenance upgrade fee of some sort, or, at some point in the future, it needs to have an official upgrade to it. That all carries a cost. You can say, in general, your budget's gonna go up 3% a year just because of inflation, or whatever you wanna pick a number. But when we're authorizing one-time expenditures that we know have ongoing expenses that we need to build in on top of what is currently in the budget, just saying it goes up 3% is not gonna be enough.
Because I know we try to do that in our departmental budgets, you know, when we look at uniforms, when we look at, I mean, which is a cost associated with all of those things. But if, you still gotta pay for it, you know, you're forecasting it, but the community's seeing the forecast, so
Well, and
you still gotta pay for it.
it's a better sale to say, this is all why we need to raise our millage if we're even gonna consider raising a millage. Just to raise a millage because this budget is shy is not going to be very appetizing to our residents and you gotta realize, the millage increase mostly affects our businesses and our second homeowners. I mean, they're the ones that pay, 8% of our expenses are paid by full-time residents. Our businesses and our tourists pay most of our expenses. So it's our 6%ers for property tax, our business owners, our second homeowners that will pay the bulk of whatever we're proposing. And they're not gonna be happy because theirs is already gonna go up a boatload of money on the county. Now, maybe that's how we sell it too. Yeah, but look what the county did.
What county's giving you for it?
Well, you know, I look at it, any benefit that we got year over year as far as income from taxes, normal sources, not hospitality, that's gonna be eaten up by inflation. And so we either stay the same and hopefully we balance it out, or we have to increase taxes. I hate to say that. None of us up here want to increase taxes. But if we're gonna increase people in the fire department, the only way to do that is for us to increase taxes. You can't take it out of hospitality, you can't take it out of anything else. We have to generate that money or not do it. That's our option.
That's your option.
Well, but you can generate that revenue by taking those 70 empty storefronts and start promoting businesses to come in here. That will generate a whole hell of a lot more income than raising a millage. I mean, there are other ways than just raising a millage that we can generate income for revenue for the town.
Is that gonna happen on July 1st?
You gonna get them businesses here?
We now have a team that can actually work on it.
I know, and I'm very proud of that team, and you should be too, because they are very proactive, and I like that.
We've got a few already coming board now. Doesn't scare me.
So, Diana, I think you left
We
off
just lost
at hospitality fund, and then the next slide was hospitality fund purchases. And we put this in here based on the conversation from the last meeting to show how Diana moved some of the money and what was being spent out.
We just moved as many capital items for police and fire as we could.
Oh, see, you did move gutters.
See, I did. I held my nose, but
listening.
I didn't move painting.
Believe it or not.
The thing I didn't move was painting.
Yeah,
Painting
I
just
can
kinda,
understand.
it's not a capital.
I can understand. You even moved PPE.
I did, I moved
We
PPE.
took
We
what
moved
y'all
as much
said
as
to
we
heart.
could.
Perfect.
So this is what I did move, and then the public works with the restroom and the swash and all those things, I think were already there. You see, there's 475,000 going to the pier.
What about the furniture? Is that not Memorial Park furniture?
That's already in hospitality,
Oh, is it?
because there's a grant that's already there.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
That wasn't, I don't think that
It's
was.
just part of this Parks and Beach number, it's in that.
Ah,
Parks and Beach.
okay.
So I moved everything that I possibly could think that I could do by the rules.
Okay.
You can't put salaries in there, it makes it a little bit harder. So that leaves us back to the enterprise funds, and that's the pier fund. And my standard people is I don't know all the answers, there's too many questions, so it's the best that I know. But obviously the lease number of 290, that would be every lease starts July 1. Don't know if that's gonna happen, so I mean, it's just a moving target. Fishing, 150 is what we used to get. I don't know whether we're gonna raise the fees, lower the fees, I don't know what we're gonna do, so that's just a number from the past. Parking is the new number that I got from Jared. The miscellaneous 10 was just kind of whether if we had events out there and people rented it, I just threw in a number, I can take it out, but it makes it worse, obviously. The 2 people for salaries, operations, and the things that John and I talked about the other day, you know, certain we need to get it up and going. Parking is the new number from Jared. We still have to pay that $331,000 in debt. The $300,000 depreciation, yes, is a non-cash thing, but that's just the accounting rules. Events, whatever events we might have out there, we want to pay for it. The pier would pay for them. Then there's $130,000 in capital, and I can't remember the life of me what that is. I know it too. I don't know what it is. I know, I don't remember what it is. Oh, the cans, probably cameras. Oh, it's probably on the next page. It's the cameras. I put $130,000 there for cameras, because at some point I think you're gonna want them. We can probably take the money from different places, but at this point, at least it's, some of it is in one place. And then we believe.
Well, that's gonna cost us twice as much to do, and we'll have to close the pier to put those out there if we don't do it now.
And then the insurance for
I just hope we're
$30,000.
willing to take the consequence of doing that, if that's a decision we're going with right now.
So then if all of these things come true, the pier would have a net addition to fund balance of $35,000 if everything comes true the way it is. I guess it's probably the money for the settlement will be higher than we think, which would be good if the decision is to give whatever comes in there goes to the pier. But that's a decision that was made before. I just kind of went on what we did this time. And that's all I have. If anybody has any questions. I don't think the next part's you, is it? The fund balance numbers didn't change. It's just on page 23. It's what we have in capital American Rescue money, which, as I've told you before, we need to have a decision. Are we kicking the can until September? Are we going to use it now? I don't have us using any of it in next year's budget. I didn't put anything in there because I know what you think you might want to do with it. My report to the feds at the end of the month, I would just say we're going to make a decision, administration, blah, 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 and kick it to September. Then the next report you give them, you have to, but you're going to have to commit yourself at some point of what you want to do.
So the commission,
But-
it has to be, I'm sorry, Ms. Keaton.
If we issued the plan and said, we're going to hold this funding to the December 2028 bond call and the 2.4 million we will owe to pay off the pier bond, would that be acceptable too? Since we have a plan?
I think you have to spend it by 26, I believe it's 26, you have to spend it by.
So
You have to obligate it by 24, you have to spend it by 26.
So we should probably be using this to pay down the debt. So if it's 331 a year, we should be allocating 331 into the pier fund every year to pay down the debt through at least 26. I mean, that at least uses some of it to pay down the debt.
But you're using hospitality now, and otherwise that balance keeps, that's totally up to you.
Well, but I'd rather have those balances grow to be used for those other things that, we continue to want to replace.
You can't replace the town hall with hospitality, that would be the only thing I would tell you.
And we still don't have the final bill on
But
the
this
pier.
is in capital, correct?
It's just in
Is
capital
this in
project.
capital
It's capital
project?
project. But you can't, right now, if you do anything over at that building over there, whatever you wanted to do over there, it can't come out of hospitality.
But it could come out of the
You can
American
use the
Rescue.
American Rescue money.
Right.
So you said, and I know you said this multiple times, so we have to have a plan to spend the money by 24, right? We
I
have to
believe
have,
it's December of 24, yeah.
so December of 24, we have to be able to have a plan on how the money's gonna be spent, and it has to be spent by
26.
26, by like December.
Memory here. I believe that's.
Are we getting interest on that money right now? I mean, is that money sitting in our account?
It's up at the state in its own account, it's earning quite a bit of money up there. Yes. It's
It
separated
could be
from everything else.
used to pay for underground wiring, because we're gonna come up short on that. Could it?
The way the rules are, you can use it for anything you want to use it for right now, but since they changed the rules, you
Okay.
can use it for anything you want.
So the only other, and we've already talked about this, the next slide was the millage increase. touched on that just to be able to show you all this didn't change from, from the last meeting on what the impact would be to our residents, with a 3, 6, or 8 mil increase. So we took the information from the last work session. Diana's done a great job. The department heads, again, have done a great job in trying to reduce that money. Yes, there's still $380,000. I do think Diana and I can go back and see if we can reduce that number even further to try to get it to the 3 mil mark. Don't know if we can do that, but we can certainly try. We can, we've looked at the positions very hard as far as what's needed and what's not needed, or what is not needed. Not a ton of questions. I mean, there's some things that we can do. What Ms. Keating was saying about trying to separate being able to show one-time expenses versus expenses that will be occurring over, a number of years or whatever that may look like. But it all boils down to now, some direction to us on how you want us to move forward. We've got one more budget work session. You'll see the draft budget book at that point, and I'll be honest with you, when you see the budget book, I will tell you that I had a hands little smile when I say this. I had some very grand plans for that budget book, but with the new administrator coming on board, with the staffing and finance and all of that, Diana and I made a decision. We're going to do our very best to show you all the numbers. There'll be some charts and some graphs to be able to show it a little bit differently, but it's not going to be.
Are we gonna get that before the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's-
And we did not send this out before the meeting because, I like sending that stuff out to have you all digest. I think you'll get the budget book because we've got, about 10 days to get that done.
10 days.
And I know Diane's kind of started on that, and we can update this. I mean, this is moving along good. This will continue to tweak. So when we go to present to the community, this will look kind of familiar to you all, and if they've been paying attention to this.
What do you need from us today?
Well, what I'd like.
$300,000.
Yeah, $300,000
Can you do a GoFundMe?
we can do that. The Bill Kinkin GoFundMe. From a position standpoint, are there any positions that you want to have some discussion about that you're like, Rob, that we're not going to do right now? If we need to rethink this, we're not going to do this. And then, does council have an appetite just to defer everything until mid-year?
Well, whatever you do mid-year, you're actually adding to next year's budget. So, I mean, you're just kicking the can down the road.
Well, you give an opportunity for you.
I agree, but that was something that was done.
Well, I know, but I mean, you think about it, there aren't that many places that we're gonna gain money. Our taxes, property taxes go up about $100,000 a year because of new construction. What else goes up $100,000? Not a whole lot.
Well, but if it's just one-time expenses that we are saying we will defer this decision, that's why I said we need to know what the ongoing consequence of these one-time expenses are. And for example, the classic is John's dump truck. If we defer $150,000 until mid-year, because we have excess money somewhere.
That's one time it's,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about
Well, I'm just
personnel.
using it just for an example. I mean, I
It's
know.
gonna be a little less than 150.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a one-time expense and we defer that until we know we've got excess revenue in the general fund, that's one and done. We don't have an ongoing obligation for that pickup truck other than maintenance and, standard stuff. But if we defer something like, the Heritage new equipment, well, that's not gonna be a one and done. Yeah, we're gonna upgrade that for $144,000, but along with that equipment comes residual, adders to the next budget. So I mean, if we look at the things that are really a one-time expense out of the general fund,
It's not many.
I mean, there's not a
To be
whole
honest with
lot.
you,
It's people.
It's the,
It's
people.
totally the
It is,
people.
it really is.
Totally the
It's-
people.
And if you add them in the middle of the year, you gotta start funding for the next
If
year.
you get them in the middle of the year, next year, you gotta have money to pay for it.
You want, the old days, I'll tell you way back, and I mean, this is just history, and probably doesn't matter to any of you, but the old day was you had to cut one person per year in order to not raise taxes. You cut one position, and that was pretty much done for quite a few years. All of you will probably remember that. And then the pandemic came in and even helped it even more, but you had to cut one position per year in order to cover everything else.
How long has it been since we raised the millage increase in town?
2019,
17 or 18.
19. Because the county dropped the mill off and then Surfside went back and added the mill.
Mill and a half, I think.
Mill and a half.
I think that we need to relook at the administrative position for courts, just to,
Yeah.
you know, it's not that much money, but here again, it's.
They got it in there.
It's in there. We haven't taken that out, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we haven't taken that out. The positions that we took out. And when I say take out, again, you know, remember we moved them to mid-year. So the positions right now that we've recommended for July the 1st, for the new budget was the 3 full-time firefighters, the 2 full-time people for the pier, the 1 full-time public works department, this on slide 5, the 1 full-time human resource risk manager, and the 1 part-time court assistant.
So that's deferring it to,
No, that's,
No, the rest are
the
different.
rest are deferred, sir. That is for, you know, July the 1st with the new 2023,
That's 6
24
people
budget.
coming out of the budget.
And then
And
mid,
2 of them comes out of pier fund, right? 2 comes out
yes,
of
they
pier
would.
fund
Yes,
and then 6 comes out of general budget.
5.5, yes.
5.5.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then we deferred Chief Hoffman's 2 police officers to mid-year, which again, I just want to reiterate, and Kenny can talk about this better than me, they don't go away, we're just deferring them. And then the administrative assistant, we had that discussion that the new administrator should have the opportunity to get in here and figure out what he or she needs. And then the full-time accountant, which has been, so,
Well, there was an assistant administrator in this year's budget, and she left. So where'd that position go?
for the deputy,
Deputy.
Yeah,
Went for ground, they
So-
went for facilities.
yeah, we moved that went for the position that Eric has, not Jamie's position.
okay.
Yes, sir.
So maybe you need to train him to do it.
So-
Okay.
We didn't talk about that. So, and I just, and no one's brought this up, but I know Mr. Drake brought it up, which was a fair point, and I just want to go ahead and talk about this just real quick. So we do not, right now, there is no one in the town that's taking care of human resources, other than Sherry Medina. Sherry Medina has taken on additional responsibilities for human resources. You know, Bill was doing that for a time, which the administrator cannot be doing human resources, period. So right now, we do not have that. Sherry has done some training, she's done some things, but it is far, far from being perfect. And before, that position was finance and HR, and Diana will tell you that does not work. The responsibility load for both of those people are too many. And we have to get someone in here. I mean, honestly, Diana and I have had conversations about advertising that position right now and getting that position hired. That human resource person does regulatory compliance, reporting tasks, welfare policies, labor relations, which we don't have a lot of that here because of right of work state, employee safety and welfare, implementation of policies and procedures, not to mention the employee orientation, the benefits. It is, you would not think, and Kenny and John can speak to this also, that it would take up as much time. It takes up a ton of time. Then you throw in some disciplinary actions that the department heads really should be removed from. you're overwhelmed. That position cannot do both things. So that is why that is in there, and I feel very strongly that that position we have to fill it. We are, we're Band-Aiding it right now. To be able to have someone doing HR. I mean, Sherry, how many onboardings do you have this afternoon? Do you have some this afternoon, or you did 3 or 4 the other day?
Did 4 last week.
And that takes away from her clerk duties and all of that. And again, we're not complaining. We all wear many hats and we do what we gotta do for you all and for the community, but it's not right.
It takes about 3 hours per person.
3 hours per person. And not to mention the other work that's done when you come up to your office because.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. You do it takes like an hour, a little over an hour to go through the book with them and find out what they want and all that. And then you have to go into the different systems and.
And even if there was not a vacancy in that position right now, I would still be saying the exact same thing. So it's just a point of discussion, for you all as we kind of look at this, but, I mean, the question to us was, what do you all need? What do we need from you all now? We need to get a balanced budget. We have one more budget work session, and then you saw the dates where we need to have the public hearing notice, and then we've got to have that public hearing with first reading, May 23rd, which is going to be here before we know it. So that's where we're at. We can go back and look at some more, but I can tell you with the work Diana's done, and her and I talk about this all the time. We sat in and worked on this for hours. I don't know how much more money we can move around to make this work. So your all's options are village increase or kick the can, and we're gonna continue to kick the can. The can will just be continually kicked down the road. And we'll go back and clean some stuff up that some of the council members want us to try and do for the next presentation, but it's gonna look very similar to this. But that's really the choices. Unless anybody else has got anything else to add to that.
And your recommendation on the millage rate?
Well, right now, based on what we're showing is, it would need to be let's see, we figured it out, a 4, or was it 5? Well, it was $75,000 per bill, and we're looking at $381,000.
And the 75,000 may change based on the new numbers that the county gives me, but that was the number that's a safe number, I guess is what I want to say. It may go to 85, it may go, it's not going to be huge.
So you're really looking at about 4 million.
I would do 3.
I would do 3, and what we need to, we'll go back and try to get it to 3, but.
If they can get it down some, 4 would cover it a little bit more.
But if you wait till July, have that new administrator
But
come
I
and make a decision on it,
I
or
kind
third decision on it.
I kind of agree with Cindy. Let's don't take the one hit, let's take a bite and let it go for a couple of years. A year at least, or 2.
If you take it at 4 million, that's gonna be a good year.
Yeah, I'm talking about
4 mil,
You wouldn't have to raise it again for another year, surely. But that's.
I think it's gonna be tough for Diana.
Our
mills
max allowable by state law is 8% this year, or 8 mils.
We don't have the second piece of the equation, but yes, I believe it'll be 8.
A 3 mil increase is a 7% increase.
$7% increase.
5 mils would cover the 381.
Mhm.
5
Yeah, 4 mils is
5 would be
300,000.
11 or 12% increase.
Based on 75,000 a minute.
Correct.
Is that, okay,
Based
Not
on,
based
based on
on
75, okay.
any increase.
so 3 doesn't cover it, 5's enough to cover it. But
Well, and again, we don't need an answer today. We'll go back and see what we can do to try to get it closer to that 3 mil, but I think that's gonna be a challenge.
I would love to see it, no more than 3 mil myself, but that don't mean that that's something that it's got to be done. It could be 4, 5.
If we do the 3, they're gonna be raised next year anyway with their reassessments. The reassessments are next year, right?
So that would bring it up some, wouldn't it?
It'll decrease it.
Yeah, decrease.
They have to stay exactly the same as they are.
Yeah.
For next year. So you roll the millage back, make it still to be exactly flat. If you don't raise it this year, then what you've got right now is all you're gonna get. You're not gonna be able to get anymore.
This is, for lack of a better, this is the year to, and I know y'all consider it all the time, every year, I'm sure, you know, for our village, but this is the year that you have to seriously consider raising the village. And again, no one wants to hear that. I don't like saying it. But it is what it is. It's one of the options.
Can you go back and look at it and come back to us and just, I know you're saying that there are no other place to look.
Well, I'm not saying that, and we will. I mean, that's direction of council. We will go back, and I say we, you know, Diana goes and looks at these, and then Diana and I sit down and she goes, okay, Rob, here's where I'm at. She's awesome at that.
Would that make everybody?
But
on council pretty happy?
we could do that. But you're looking at, so, you know, 3 mills is $225,000. We're at 381 now.
Bye-bye dump truck.
No, that's really not in the
That's not
decision.
even in the decision. I mean, it's all in employees.
It's all
You
employees.
notice John's keeping a stone face.
It's the 3 firemen.
The dump truck's still in the general fund.
But kind of that cap replacement, it's covered.
Oh, so you moved
So
it.
it is.
We moved it.
Totally,
Human
under-
resource,
it's totally-
part-time court
It's
system.
people.
It's totally
it's
people.
people.
It's all it is, it's people.
We got people.
Chief, I'm sorry, but it's gonna be hard for you to get
It's gonna be very hard, yeah.
He only wants 2, 3 vehicles,
No, that's
No.
three people.
2 people.
3 people.
3 people.
No, she
Yeah.
wants 3 people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
One people.
The other chief.
Yeah.
Yes, one people.
I mean, certainly,
I'm sorry about that, but.
no. I mean, I'm gonna go back and,
And I'm,
you know, Kenny and I sat down and talked about this and I know what Kenny did. I mean, again, when you have 3 shifts and you only put on 2 people, there's a shift that, you know, doesn't have that person. But I will tell you, do I like that? No, I don't like it at all. I'll tell you that right now. I don't like it at all. But Kenny probably doesn't like getting his 2 police officers right now either. So could we make it work and maybe defer a position until January, do 2 and defer it? Sure we could. There's a lot of different options and I'm a team player as much as anybody else. It's just, this isn't just about the fire department.
no,
And, you know, I've heard some comments about how can the fire chief be the interim administrator working on the budget, wanting people? Well, it's because I'm looking at it as not just as the fire chief, they'll all tell you that. But, you know, we'll have to go back and make those tough decisions and.
But like I said, before we put all those people in place, the next administrator, I think, needs to have a voice in it. I really do.
I think the next administrator,
If he-
I think the next administrator
He or
is gonna
she's
have,
for
he or she's gonna have a lot, but I can tell you that, and I'll just tell you this, Rob Clemens' opinion, of the candidates that we will be reviewing, I can tell you because we sat down and talked with them, there's not gonna be a change in mind about public safety and what
Well,
we do.
That's fine.
well, that's like I said earlier, you can sell this millage rate to people just on protection, the safety of the town. I'm serious, you can, because people believe in our safety in town, and our maintenance. I mean, you know, them things that everybody's gotta realize, cost is more, every year it's costing us more. And you can't continue to do the same thing and stay at the same level.
And Mr. Stamey, I agree with, I think it's the safety of the town because, you know, Chief Hoffman, this is a very safe community. You know, we, with the pier and all of that, there's gonna be increased volume, not just in the police department, but in the fire service also. It's just a different dynamic of those types of calls. And it's our residents coming in too, you know, they look at the fire department and they look at what we have and trust me, I've had questions. And how do y'all do it with just 2 people? How do you get all of this done? Well, you just do. I mean, it does affect the safety of the community with only 2 people on a fire engine. I showed you all the numbers, showed you in this study. But at the end of the day, this is about keeping taxes low, keeping our community safe, and doing the best we can. And if we have to go back to sharpen the pencil and I gotta only do 2 firefighters and do like Chief Hoffman did and try to defer it, move it to trying to fill that last one mid-year, it's a discussion.
Well, the deferring, all you're doing is creating a demand for next year. So
Mr.
we
King,
take it down to
I agree with you.
months.
Oh, man, we'll get the
I'm just,
Torrey County thing redone.
I agree with you. I think we need 3 firefighters. I don't want to move off of that at all. I need 3 firefighters, but I work at the will, we all do, at council. with what
We can't
decisions
afford
that you
any
all
of
make.
them. I mean, your personnel is what's driving the 381.
Yes, sir. But there's and you all know this, there's a lot that goes into running this down.
Oh, I
You
know,
all know that.
I'm not arguing that. I don't know how you function without, I don't even know how you're gonna function with 3 on a shift, much less 4. But we can't afford the 4, we can't afford the 3. But
It's a challenge every day, isn't it?
it is. I don't quite understand how you put the truck on the road when you only have 2 people full-time.
Because my overtime budget's about 450% over.
Huh?
The overtime budget for the fire department is about, right to this date, it's probably 450% over budget.
Okay.
That's how you do it. So
But
when you
is that
equate
right?
that to, what's
I
that?
mean, if you know you're gonna need $100,000 in overtime, that should be part of the budget.
Yes. Well, and we have to increase that budget. We were hoping that we would be able to keep it flatter with part-time people because we did add more,
Yeah.
but that did not come to fruition. That has always been my worry with part-time people. Helped a little bit, but not like we thought it would.
It goes back to what Kenny said at the last meeting, what kind of risk? The town wanted,
Yeah,
what's the acceptable level of risk? Across the board, in every department,
every part.
When I say risk, it could be public safety, it could mean services, it could be, what is it?
So if you don't get your 1 person, what services are cut?
Well, certain things may not be able to get done. We might not be able to add an event without, people can't take vacation. You'd be paying out people's vacation, you get disgruntled workforce, and things like the non-tangibles.
And I think
Truck breaks down, we can't clean up a hurricane as fast if we have a truck that's broken down. That's 23-year-old done.
We're talking people, not
Yeah. Well, I'm saying, but
you got a lot of equipment.
everything, there's a cost,
It is a lot of, and it's hard for us to put our thumb, John just said it perfectly. It's a lot of the intangibles that happen for all of us. All these events, Tabitha and I sat down the other day and looked at the event. She's going to show the event list differently, so people understand it a little bit better. And, throughout the community, and all of these events that take public works, the police department, I have people working, trying to cover a shift and do all these events, and it is.
Yeah, I've got guys who always worked events for whoever was doing the events. Well, this year, the first year, they said, look, I'm tired of doing events. I'm just tired of doing Saturday, I want my weekend back.
Yeah, because they're every weekend. Well, not every, but I'm saying they're working all these events.
There's a point where you just can't squeeze it anymore.
And, some people might say, well, adding 1 or 2 people, how does that help? Is it gonna fix everything? No, but it'll give somebody off, or it adds a different dynamic to a work life.
But our events don't take the overtime hours and add it as part of the event. In other words, the true cost of that event is not in our events, because you have the cost of the band and the cost of this and that, but it doesn't have the extra time that you put in, and you put in.
Yeah, we charge our time for the
You
event.
do chip charge.
We do,
Okay.
yes, sir.
It's not a Saturday, it's not,
Yes.
it's not helping my budget. It's that those extra hours on Saturday and Sunday, they're being moved over to events. Events
Okay.
are paying for that.
But I'm glad it's showing up where it should show up.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't help you out, but at least the money shows up where it should.
Yeah, it's just like Huckabee, you know, the amount of time we spend maintaining Huckabee in the course of a year, that's isolated in a separate, it's still in the ground, but it's isolated over to the side. So we know how much we spend on that.
It's about $40,000 this hour.
More than that, yeah.
But it's still people to do it. That's the
Yeah,
it's
people, equipment,
intangible.
materials,
Yeah, it is.
chemicals, everything.
So, is there anything for the next, budget work session? I mean, we took a few notes, we'll go back, we'll take another look to see how close we can get to a 3 mil. And there's a few other little items that I wrote down here that Diane and I will look at as far as one-time costs and trying to see what is, what's reoccurring.
I don't know that you want to be automatic or artificially forced to 3 mil. Because it's abundantly clear that it's not going to be enough for next year.
Right, and I'm only saying that because there's been some discussion. I'm not saying that's gonna be the only discussion, to your point. But we'll just see what we
With
can
many
do.
of these ads, there's additional ongoing costs other than just your assumed inflation of what is today.
Yeah, people every year.
So, you know, unless
You know
you
that.
really want to start saying we're gonna raise millage every year, just like the county,
I do not wanna say that at
I
all.
mean,
Next administrator can say that, but Rob Combs doesn't wanna say that. But I agree with what you're saying. We need to at least be able to show, what that could potentially look like. And again, the 3 mills, I'm only saying that because I think there's some discussion for that, but it may not work. And this is what it's supposed to be with ongoing, or not supposed to be. Ongoing costs, and this is the reality of where we're at.
Well,
Unless we get rid of all of them.
that's it. If you add your 5.5 people, it's $381,000, $85,000. So it's a 5 mil increase to cover that. If you add all 5.5. So our decision is, can we swallow that or we don't add any people? Because every person you add, except for the 2 for the pier, and that's covered by the pier, we've got to increase millage just to cover 1 person. And 5.5 people, we got to go up 5 mils. And that's our dilemma, is do we not do anything and keep it the way it is, which I think is a mistake. I'm gonna come out and say, I think it's a mistake, that we need to bite the bullet. You know, some of these positions, I feel really we need. And unless somebody's kicking it down the road to mid-year, all that does is just increase the budget for next year. Because unless you're gonna fire them at the end of the year, you gotta pay them for next year. So you're looking at a long-term investment. We're not talking about something that's a one-time deal. This is an ongoing cost. And unfortunately, any benefit we've gotten from added taxes on property value and added this other stuff is being eaten up by inflation. And so we're not gaining anything. The inflation's eating up our ads. And so the only way we're gonna add people is increase millage. That's the way I look at it.
Diana, anything
Or do a GoFundMe.
else? Anything else on you?
Y'all got anything else y'all want to say?
I can, you know, there's some increases we might be able to put in the revenue side now that we have more months to look at, but usually the increases in things like business license and parking and things like that cover the cost you were talking about, Mrs. Keating, of how much does this cost go forward? So those costs are probably kind of built in there. It's the basic salary and benefits that's the problem.
And parking doesn't go in the general fund anyway.
Well, no, it doesn't, but,
Move it where you want
no, I don't do that, but there's other things that go up, fines, the licenses and permits, you just never know where that's gonna go. That usually is what covers the salary increases that we have, but I don't know, I can go back and look at that, but I don't think we got 300,000.
probably don't.
I don't think and then I would be rather unconservative and leave you with a budget that, I don't know whether you make it or not. I just don't
Yeah,
know.
we don't need smoke and mirrors.
No,
I
you
mean,
need the truth.
If you think that's what we like about you. You're conservative. You give us numbers that we know that we can depend on. And if you start giving us numbers that, oh yeah, well, we got this covered, and it doesn't happen, then we still got an issue.
That's true, and that's not what
And
I
I
do,
don't want
you know
that.
that.
I'd rather have an honest budget.
You at least make the numbers usually that I give you.
Yeah.
You at least make that and possibly a little more.
And that's what we count on.
In other places, they will totally go in and inflate the business license number to cover whatever they need. And then it doesn't happen.
Yeah, then what do you do?
Raise millage.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Back in.
yeah, back end, so.
Chief Altman?
Um,
Nothing? All right, Mayor, unless there's anything else from council.
So does anybody have any comments from council before we,
Go home and have a drink.
and I need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? This meeting is adjourned.
Your fault, almond pound cake.